Hey guys, welcome back to another YouTube video here on my YouTube channel. Hopefully this gets to you before FNCS has started. This is 10 golden tips for FNCS that hopefully you can put to use and hopefully get a great placement and make yourself proud, because I really want you guys to do well in FNCS if you're competing, and hopefully these tips will help you. I never want to put something obvious, so these tips will not be something obvious. These will be tips that will definitely give you a boost in performance, but not something that you've heard before, something that's sort of obvious to most people. I really want to give you tips that most people don't know about, so that this video actually has that impact, actually has that usefulness to you. So no delays, let's get right into the video, and hopefully you guys find it useful. Let me know if you guys have any questions down in the comments below. Other than that, let's get right into the 10 golden tips. So the first tip that I have for you guys for the FNCS upcoming is that if you're playing grapplers, be sure to slide immediately after you grapple and you land, because I really think it's extremely fast if you do so, and you're gonna find a lot of extra speed just by sliding and saving a ton of mats by doing that. And I think if you just pay attention here, and this is not even a downhill slide, I really think if you're going downhill, you're gonna find extra speed from that and find a free rotate just from sliding. But you'll see that, like, hey, you can get away with a really good slide and potentially save 200-300 mats just from sliding a little bit. And hopefully you'll see Buckty slides in too. It actually bugs out in the replay, but he actually does in back slide, and we get a lot of extra distance. If you notice, we land here. Right, like we land here, we don't land all the way in the front, but look where we ended up, as a matter of fact. And I really think if you are playing grapplers, be sure to slide on low ground if you have the opportunity to. You know, if you end up landing somewhere like right here, you can still slide, right? Like if you land on this cone, slide all the way to the front, place a floor, and then box up here. There is combinations, like you can do it on cones as well, and it still works. So you don't necessarily have to land on low ground, you just need to slide after you land, and you'll find an extra 2, 3, 4 blocks of distance for quite literally free. And I don't think you need to waste your mats on that. So the second tip that I have for you guys is actually quite simple. If your teammate gets beamed on a rotate, then do not leave them alone, because they can definitely get isolated and picked off. So if your teammate does get beamed on a rotate, wait for them to heal. You know, Bizzle in this case should absolutely just box up next to their teammate and just wait and heal and just play together, because yes, it's important to finish the rotate, and you know, maybe it looks free right now, but if your teammate gets left alone, it's quite simple for us. Like, we didn't do anything special here. Honestly, the enemy made the mistake and gave us the opportunity. We noticed Bizzle rotating ahead, and we just 2v1 the opponent, who's still back here, by the way, because they're trying to heal. And in this specific case, it's actually really easy to aggress and actually finish up the kill, right? Like, it's nothing crazy by me, nothing crazy by Buckty. It's really easy to actually get this kill, because it's a 2v1, and anytime there's a 2v1, it's quite simple to actually end the fight quickly. So I've tried to grab the exit and actually block off the third party as well. I use metal to block the third party and just collect the loot. So one thing that I think could completely solve this situation is Bizzle just staying with X-Belt and healing together, right? Even if Bizzle doesn't have to heal, it's really simple for Bizzle to just stick back and pay attention to the fact that his teammate got beamed, and I think that alone will solve the issue. So the third tip that I have is actually to sneak up through enemy builds, especially when you hear a fight going on with the team that you're aggressing on. So in this particular example, we are in half zone. We actually pulled zone, and you'll see that actually this Edge of Storm will expand and reveal all these builds back here. So some of these builds are ours, and then some of these builds are theirs, and they're actually pretty connected, right? So I think some of these walls are enemy walls and some of these builds are ours. But essentially what we realize is, hey, we can sneak back through about here, break this build, and we can actually get into this team's tarp while they're fighting. And so that's exactly what we do. If I just speed this ahead, you'll see we notice them fighting, and we try to like sneak in and sort of crouch walk. Now the key thing to making this work is to break into the enemy tarp at an area where the place that you're breaking in is out of audio range from where they are located. So break in from a location that's really far away, and I think from there you can actually sneak up and get a potential impact. And so you'll see that we start shooting this out, and we sort of wait to see, you know, what are they fighting. We don't break right away, because we don't want to break when it's really silent, because I feel like they're gonna hear the pickaxe sound at that point. So we actually wait until they start fighting, which should happen pretty soon, right? We're just waiting, because right now it's pretty silent, right? At this point, we are not trying to aggress if we don't, you know, see an opportunity to aggress. If there's no third party potential, I don't want to aggress. I think that's actually pretty risky. Maybe they're just sitting there waiting. For all we know, they could be expecting us. But if we hear shotgun shots in their direction, if we hear a fight going on, clearly they're not waiting for us. Clearly they're in a fight, and this is the sound cue that we were waiting for, and this is the point where we start to sneak in. All of these pre-edited walls is a perfect formula for us to actually get a kill. Unfortunately, even though the setup was actually actually really good, and we actually sneak in perfectly. Me and Bucky are crouch walking in. There's no visual, audio, sound, or notification. We sneak up behind Flu Scare Bear and we try to one pump him completely. Unfortunately, we don't hit hard enough, so we only hit him for about 120, 130 and don't knock him immediately. And Scare Bear is a really good player. He actually reaction times the wall and sneaks back up and gets away from us. Unfortunately, we don't kill Scare Bear, but you know, we could maybe kill a teammate, and Scare Bear can't really help because he's pretty low HP, so we can maybe kill the teammate. So just try to immediately get in and try to kill, but unfortunately they react really quickly. Like, props to them, right? They reset walls and get out really quickly, and I think that's the main reason they actually survived this attempt, right? Most players will not have the reaction time of these players, and I honestly think this tactic will work 90% of the time, as long as you hear that audio cue of them fighting. And I feel like that's gonna work, right? Because they're gonna be distracted, and it's really easy to sneak up on someone if that someone is distracted. So the fourth tip is actually related to height, because if you're in fort zone, poised to take height. What I mean by that is if you're the highest team in your area, and even though we're like 2 blocks up max, like that's not really that high, we are the highest team in this area, and I really would love to play height if we do pull half because it's really easy to hold height and get away with the benefits of it in this meta, because there's no rifts, there's no launch pads, there's only grapplers, which is pretty easy to shoot out of midair. And I really think we have a potential to get height if and only if we pull half zone. Luckily for us, in about 10 seconds you'll see that we actually indeed do pull half zone. So when this happens, we take a little bit of time, we decide, hey, do we want to play height? I think we do, right? Here's a really cool trick that you can use to actually play height in your games, is when you do crank up, have one person a little bit lower, maybe like 2 blocks up, and he's just poised right here. And the reason you want that is so that, you know, if someone tries to shoot out your height, you have this one person to actually save you and hold your builds, right? So the way I crank, if you notice, I do really cheap 90s, so I don't put floors at all, and I also face both of the walls towards where most of the people are going to be rotating from. So if you notice from this perspective, this looks like a full tower, right? This looks very intimidating and very menacing, right? To the fact that I literally have a full tower, but actually it's not a full tower at all, and I'm saving a ton of mats by doing this. All Bucky has to do is to connect and make sure this doesn't get shot out, and that's why we have him a little bit lower. We're also on a little bit of a hill, so these guys won't crank up. They're already in half here, and as long as, you know, these guys don't come close to us, none of this will get chopped out. And I think this is really easy to do, is to crank cheap 90s, and as long as these are hard mats, you should be actually relatively safe. And just make sure these are completely full build. Like, you'll see I get shot quite a bit, but then as soon as it sort of calms down and my hard match gets a little bit, you know, full HP, it becomes very easy for me to hold height because of how high I actually went up. And I don't think this is actually that many mats, and if you really think about it, this is literally less than 200 mats to get up this high. So if you can do these cheap 90s and, you know, wall stare, wall stare all the way up to the top, you'll find that it's actually really cheap and still looks like a full tower from this angle. And I actually hold a bunch of people, get a bunch of surge, get a couple kills maybe, and you know, it's very easy to hold height from here. You'll actually even notice, just a final thought, that if someone tries to go up on opposite height over here, they might not even want to do it. So you'll actually notice there's no opposite height. Usually in half what ends up happening is there's 2 heights, right? And the reason that is because these 2 teams want to sort of look for first moving, right? So even though we didn't first moving, there's no opposite height because no one cares to think about it because of the fact that we're so high, right? If they want to like play for opposite height, they have to be close to my layer, right? They have to be this high, and I feel like most people don't want to do that, if you'll notice, right? So like, these guys have open toss, but they're like kind of hesitating. They're like, okay, do we really want to crank this high? This is kind of stupid, right? So this is really opposite height. It's just really it's funny because like they don't want to really play it at all. They're just gonna play mid ground, and that's my point. Is because we're so high, you can sort of intimidate opposite height from not even playing the game at all. And so we have height this game. The next thing that I want to remind you of actually is the fact that storm sickness carries on and doesn't reset once you get into safe zone. So if you pay attention to this game, we actually tank storm for quite literally a very long time because of the fact that we find a kill in zone and zone pulls extremely far north and we land somewhere in the bottom side of the map. So we actually tank storm a lot this game, and it actually ends up affecting us because of the fact that storm sickness did not reset. So we actually play medkits in my solo clutch potential here, and I actually play medkits twice, and that actually ends up, you know, messing me over because of the fact that I get really close to storm sickness. Just to be clear, storm sickness is this new mechanic that only gives you limited time in storm. So if you spend, I don't know exactly the timer or how long it is, but let's say if you spend like 5 minutes in storm, you start taking an incredible amount of damage and pretty much die instantly, right? So it's really important to remember that. Like, notice my first medkit play, I medkit all the way to 10 HP and spent an extra 8 seconds, but because I spent so much time earlier in the game in Storm, you'll see that I actually get the warning for Storm Sickness, right? And maybe it doesn't show in replay because it's bugged. Yeah, it doesn't show in replay, but in the game, I actually got the warning. And this is a reminder to you guys that Storm Sickness carries on and doesn't reset. The timer is a static timer that will not change based on, you know, whether you came into safe zone. It does not care, right? Because I spent so much time, I started med misting over here, and you'll look at my HP right here. It drops instantly, right? So if I just show you one more time, unfortunately the replay is bugged, so it doesn't show you the Storm Sickness warning, but look at my HP here. Right, actually right here, the storm rages, exit the storm to remove Storm Sickness, right? Which is really crazy. I only spent 3 seconds here, but because I spent so much time in Storm previously in the earlier parts of the game, I'm actually ticking extremely hard, hitting 30 per second, maybe 30 for half a second. It was crazy. It was a lot of damage, and actually, even though I get 7th, I could have got much more had I remembered about Storm Sickness and the fact that it doesn't reset once you get back into safe zone. It still carries on its previous timer, and you can surprise you just like this one, right? If you really look, like I literally was just in safe zone right before this kill. Like I'm not in Storm here, you know what I mean? I'm 120 HP. I'm not in Storm. This guy actually punched me pretty hard. Pick up the med mist, and then I don't think Storm Sickness is gonna hit me here, right? And I started med misting because I don't have a lot of mats. I'm a solo, as I can, you know, pretty close to zone. I want to see which way it pulls before I get out, and then I start ticking extremely hard and die immediately, right? And so be ready for that. We don't want you guys to lose solo clutches because of this. Remember the fact that timer does not reset just because you went into safe zone. So I actually ran out of scrim material, so we're going to hop into Eomzo and Jamper's VOD review to actually look for tips that they do specifically to hopefully give us an edge for FNCS this season. So the first thing that I want to tell you guys is to give very clear instructions every single time you make a call, right? So like if you ever remember in science class, whenever you make a procedure in like a science lab or something like that, they tell you to be extremely specific, right? Tie an action to the very beginning of your sentence and then make it very clear. Like you cannot be confusing. So every time you make a call, don't try to give only information, give a command. And what I mean by that is like if you want your teammate to follow you, don't say follow me, tell them where you went. Oh, I went up 1 layer, hop up 2, mantle over here, come up 1, drop 1. I went to low, come front low, right? So be very specific and obvious. Don't just say follow me, right? Understand and tell them exactly what you want them to do, right? And be more specific other than general instructions, because oftentimes in endgame it becomes very easy to lose track of your leader and lose track of the person that's tarping. So every time you're tarping, tell them very specifically where you went. Tell them, hey, tank storm, I'm going around to the left, I'm dropping 1, right? Like there's so many different ways we can do it, but I think Eomzo and Jamper give us very easy and easy to follow examples. So let's watch this, right? So if I just go back a little bit, you'll see a really good example of what they do here. So right about here, Jamper says come low ground, right? So he drops low ground and tells Eomzo to like come down low, right? We'll listen for it here.
Yeah, I have 6 build.
We need to drop. Come low, I'm not joking.
We need to drop, come low, right? And so it's very obvious what Eomzo has to do to make sure that they get together, right?
Going down one. Yeah, come down under here.
I can't build for you, bro.
And Eomzo doesn't have mats. He's trying to med miss. Eomzo says, I can't build for you, right? So he tells Jamper to be careful.
Watch your back.
Okay.
I'm healing.
Yeah.
And Eomzo plays for himself. He does not sacrifice his safety just to blindly follow Jamper, right? Like he only has 3 builds, so he's gonna wait. He's gonna heal up to get to max, because as he's going through here, he could easily just get pumped randomly. And so he wants to play his own life and be safe. So he sits in the hard mats instead, heals up, and goes into Jamper's tarp right after. So if we skip ahead,
That's tough. We might have to wait. We have to wait until they go more front.
we might have to wait until they go more front. So they're actually, their layer is ending and they need to go up 1 because the grass doesn't allow them to go forward. So it's really important to understand, don't just rush it, right? Maybe they can take a little bit of a slower route and go around to get up layers, right? I would imagine low ground is already taken, so the layer right above them is definitely taken, so they can't play that, right? So they need to stagger until and then go around to the left, right? So that's what they do. They find a free kill out on the left on Acorn here, and then right after they crank. And so if you very closely listen to what Eomzo says, he doesn't just say follow me, right? He says how to follow him, right? So listen.
Nice.
Go up, mantle.
Go up, mantle. Right? So specific, and it's so easy for Jamper to follow because Eomzo's quite literally playing the game for him with his comms. And the mark of a good IGL, or a mark of a good communicator, is to be very specific with your instructions, and hopefully this tip will help you do just that in FNCS. Before we go into the next tip, I just want to give you one more example of the tip that I just talked about.
That hurt.
So just wait.
That's a solo front. I gotta do that.
Go in zone. Up.
Go in zone, up, right? Especially like, I think layer changing communication is the best and most specific thing that you can say, because then it becomes very easy to not lose track of your leader. So the 7th tip that I have for you guys is to make sure you understand as a solo. Let's just watch it here to give you guys some context. They actually run out of mats, so they don't have that many builds, so they follow a team a little bit, bully them a little bit, and follow them because they understand they have to fight in order to get an impact. If they don't, they just die, so they have no choice. And Yamzo actually calms here. We have to fight. So they just rush in, follow the tarp. These guys are scared, jump in. And notice the movement here, right? So Yamzo moves out to the left to get a nice right hand peek and also isolate the 1v1 so that he only is exposed to one person, so he doesn't take as much damage. Notice how the other guy can't shoot him at all, right? And then understands his SMG's out of ammo. Pump into AR switch, so the good awareness there. But that's not the tip. The tip is actually when you're solo clutching, understand what you have versus what you need to actually get into the top 2, top 3, top 4 placement, because realistically that's all you want as a solo. You know, if you can win the game, definitely win the game, but realistically the chances of winning the game is really slim. So you just want deep placement. Top 2, top 3, top 4, all of those are acceptable. You know, getting a top 12 for example is not acceptable. So I think if you have the materials and the tools to get the top 2, top 3, top 4, play a lot safer than you usually are and don't go for risky stuff, right? So in this specific case, what does Yamzo have? He's 5-2-1, he has a med miss, and in this specific case it greatly benefits him to not take any risk at all. So I'll show you a lot of examples where he could have gone for a play but decides rather not to. So opens up, grapples all the way to the front. So he very deliberately chooses that specific layer. So if you notice when he grapples, this specific layer right here on my mouse, this brick is taken. There's a solo on this layer, but this is actually not taken, right? There's no builds up here. Maybe there's a team in that wood, but like he just bases with hards in this layer, right? And I feel like this is actually a really good layer to base on. He just needs to be careful of below him. These guys might edit and shoot his floors out, but other than that, he's good. Armored walls his bottom because he knows there's a team underneath. We saw that before from the grapple. You know, when we're grappling midair, we know where teams are, what layers are taken, and so then he knows there's a team here as well, so he sprays this wall out, sort of give off an aggressive vibe. You know, when you're playing a little bit aggressive, you notice how he's not taking the wall, he's not doing anything risky, he's just spraying it. And so when you give off this aggressive vibe, you are less susceptible to people thinking you're a solo because you're sort of playing aggressive. It's sort of unexpected, right? So you can just spray people's walls, especially people that are most likely going to key you, and you give off this aggressive vibe to make sure that they potentially play a little bit more scared, a little bit more reserved. So then he goes back tarp, cones his tops over there, looks down, doesn't see anyone, closes, looks again, sees a new person, right? Hits them 118. Now where do you think this player is going to go, right? If I could go into drone free right now, I can't because it's a YouTube video, but this player is actually heading towards my mouse right here. He's going down. He's going to be going right under Yamzo. So if Yamzo were to edit his floor, which is very, very tempting, then he would get the kill, but he doesn't. Why doesn't he edit his floor, right? You see that the enemy just left and went into this tile. So why doesn't Yamzo edit the floor? Why doesn't he drop down onto that very HP advantage kill? Because it's unsafe, it's risky, and you don't necessarily need it. You have 500 wood and you have a full med mist, which is great for a solo clutch. It's all the tools that you need. He knows he doesn't need much, so he's looking at a very safe manner. He never leaves his tarp. All the builds that are his is his safe haven, and if he edits down to sort of, you know, go for a finish or anything like that, he's going to find trouble. Notice how this is a knock, right? You would think he might go for that. You know, a lot of people think, oh my god, he only has wood, he needs mats. Truth be told, he doesn't need anything. He's really, really safe right now, so he just needs to tarp ahead a little bit, cone his tops because he's pretty close to second height, and that's it. Like, just play it really, really safe. This solo comes along, he just keeps his crosshair out, doesn't, you know, aggress too hard, and he's playing safe, and that's all you need to do, right? As a solo, really make sure you don't lose your HP, because once you get cracked once, it's very, very difficult to not only run away from the team that's about to aggress you, but to recover and heal when you need to, you know, heal as a solo. It's very, very attention seeking. It's very obvious when you get cracked. A lot of people's attention now turn to you, so he plays extremely safe, right? He doesn't need anything. He's gonna med miss from here on out, and that's about it. When this solo clutch started, there was 25 people left. Now he's just started his med mist and it's 10 people left. People die very, very quickly in this meta, guys. When there's no mobility and it's very difficult, obviously grapplers is mobility, but that's the only mobility we have, and in late movings that's not really something you can use reliably. Just understand, hey, there's a lot of solos that are going to be alive here, and there's a lot of people without that many mats, okay? So really play to that fact and play a little bit more patient than you do, even if you don't have that many mats, right? Edits down, dodges that shot, builds himself in. He utilizes pretty much all his mats, right? And heals up. Probably gonna tarp ahead a little bit. Oh, nice, good kill. It's top 8. It was top 25 when it started, guys. Even if you were to die right here, he would be just fine and very happy with that placement. But as a matter of fact, he ends up killing quite a lot of people and getting second place. But even if you were to die right now, I don't think he would be that upset. That is a really good solo clutch tip. If you have the tools that you need to make deep placement, do not play unsafe. Do not play risky when you do not need to as a solo. The things that you can do as a solo is already limited, so play to that fact. So the 8th tip that I have for you guys is actually related to impacts. If you find yourself needing an impact, like Yamzo here only has 200 mats, they desperately need a kill in order to continue playing this game. So you'll notice a lot of beginners or amateurs, what they do is they open their wall and just double spray back towards backside of zone. But truth be told, most of those kills that you get aren't even impacts, they're just kills, right? Because they're so far away to actually collect the loot. There's no point in going for something like that. What you want to do instead is very simple. You have 2 options. You need to look below you and maybe even take doubles on the tarps below you one layer, or you look above you one layer and go for drop downs on people above you, right? Maybe there's a new tarp coming in alongside your tarp and you see them and you piece the box right underneath them. 3, 2, 1, double spray, and then hopefully they fall into your box. You can piece the floor, you can piece the cone by placing a stair or placing a cone, and you can hopefully get a drop down, because when you kill that person, they're going to be in your builds. And when you kill someone in an enemy tarp underneath you and you get doubles on them, they're going to be in a very safe place where you can drop down into their tarp, and you don't really care about dropping into enemy builds there because it's a 2v1 hopefully, or you've killed both of them, and it's a really safe place for you to actually drop down and pick up the mats. It's pretty easy to get impacts when you look above you one layer and below you one layer. And let's sort of see Yamzo in action and sort of look what he does for impacts. Notice we quickly look through the wall. There's not really an opportunity there. You have to notice when you open a wall, people tarping in can see that from a distance. It's very easy. So good players, when they're rotating in, they'll immediately change layers. They don't want to, you know, tarp right next to your wall. People aren't that bad. People have gotten better. They're gonna change layers even in opens. So be careful to that. Yamzo looks down. It's much easier to catch someone unaware when you look down like that, right? Look up, potential person. Pumps him 100, cracks, actually hits him 38, but cracks him, immediately edits the floor to try to maybe look for a spray down. They stir tarping, so if you just spray the floor, hopefully they fall down. This is the sort of way you want to look for impact. You know, they're getting a lot more done by doing this, right? Looks through his cone, sees a solo on the layer above. You see how you're catching so many more unsuspecting players just from looking one layer below and one layer above. And so to repeatedly do that, don't waste your valuable time looking through your wall or spraying backwards. Usually that's not going to get much done. So be very deliberate about looking one layer below you and one layer above, because that's where the impacts are usually found. Yamzo actually gets his solo and gets 555 mats, like a really good amount of mats. So that's all they need, and now they're gonna win this game. Guys, I'm not even kidding. This is about like 30 seconds later. Just to expand again on the previous tip, I want to show you guys what they do. So they look above, potentially get a kill. This doesn't work out because the guys are pretty aware. That's okay. Zone pulls back, so they actually run back through their tarp. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. You'll immediately notice they try to piece someone trying to get in below them, and it almost turns into a kill. You know, they backwards ramp, but Jumper tries to, you know, harpoon in. Yamzo's holding a cone, doesn't work. These guys get away, but it was very close, right? So these guys reacted very quickly, but if they didn't react quickly, it would be a kill. However, immediately after, you'll notice, where do we look? Below one, above one. We haven't looked above yet, so they look up and drop down a kill. This is the place where you find impacts, guys. Do not look on your layer itself, or don't look all the way in backstorm. That's not going to net you impacts. That's going to get you kills, but that's not actually what you care about, because you want to find kills where you can actually pick up the mats. And the best way to do that is to look below you one layer and look above you one layer, because that's actually kills that's within reach. Because right after you get the kill, you need to be able to go loot it, right? Killing someone across the zone doesn't do that. So really make sure you're paying attention to this tip. This is a very valuable one. I find that a lot of your endgames are going to be much more consistent if you follow this tip. So for the last 2 tips, I actually have a height game for you guys where Yamzo and Jumper have height from first moving, and the 2 tips are this. The first one is to watch your flank, because height is actually really strong this meta because of the fact that there's no launch pads and there's no rift to goes, both of which are really easy tools to retake height. But since both of those things are gone, height is really strong if you get it, right? Obviously height is not really free because of the fact that a lot of teams are going to go for it, but once you have it, if you know how to hold it, it's really easy to win the game from there. given the fact that you have enough mats to do so. So the first tip is to make sure you're constantly watching your flank, because the way that most people are going to take height from you is going to be to flank you from behind, using your height tarp as a line of sight reduction to get up to you without you knowing. So to be very careful, Iamzo and Jamper constantly, before anything even happens, constantly look behind them. So just watch this, listen to their comms, notice what happens, and you'll see how they watch their flank. They're constantly looking backward. There's no reason to really look forward. If you just look backwards, I feel like you never are susceptible to any flopper players coming up, and anyone in general trying to ramp up using your tarp as a cover. So really make sure you're constantly looking backwards, and really make sure you understand, hey, let's stay up like 5 to 8 to 10 blocks, because we should be relatively safe if we tarp up that much, because not a lot of people are going to look up and shoot us out. As long as we're high enough, I really feel like, you know, stay really high and then drop down a couple, connect, and then stay really high. To show you really quickly, I'll sort of show you in a paint. Let's say second height is like somewhere around here, right? Let's say this line is second height, and let's say this is 3 block mark, right? Because 3 blocks is where you can connect from. Actually 2 blocks is where you can connect from, right here. And so you don't want to actually tarp right here. That doesn't make any sense. You're only 2 blocks, right? This is only 2 blocks from second height, and I think second height will just notice you and then just crank up really easily, and 2 blocks doesn't give you a lot of time to actually react to second height cranking up. So screw that, right? 2 blocks isn't good enough. Let's say this is a 2 block mark. You should be up here, right? You should be all the way up there, and then when you need to connect, go down, connect, right? Connect with this wall, and then go back up above second height, and then play there, and then go down and connect again if you need to. And I call this the V-shape height tarping, right? So you essentially perch up like a bird at a higher layer, and then if you need to connect, you backwards ramp down, connect, and then quickly go back up. And it's much safer that way, because 2 blocks isn't enough time for you to react to second height cranking. That way you can actually sort of base up much higher, and overall it'll be much easier for you to actually play height if you're so much higher than second height and not just 2 blocks like most people usually do. Watch Iamzo and Jamper this game. You'll watch them watch flank. So apart from the V-shaped tarp and looking backwards at your flank, I'll give you even a bonus tip, which is the fact that when you're tarping like Iamzo is here, really make sure you build ahead and then run back. So it's really important to understand, in a game like Fortnite, builds sort of take time to build, if you will, and get strong. You kind of want to build them early, kind of like how Iamzo is doing here. If you kind of like builds cones and backwards ramps in front of him like so, and then doesn't stand on them, he builds forward and then runs back to the mats that are actually healthy. And I think that's what you want to do. You slowly, very slowly want to inch forward. You want to build the builds early, but do not stand on them, because they're pretty weak HP, right? You'll notice this. He quickly goes back onto the mats that are 220 HP and not the ones that are really fresh, because those are easier to shoot out. He inches himself forward very slowly and then connects. You see this V-shaped tarp that he's doing? He's ramping down, connect, and then eventually he's going to go back up and get back up to 3-4 block elevation above second height. And the reason they're actually not shooting that often in this endgame is because they don't have a lot of AR ammo. So all they need to do is to be safe, because they actually have a ton of mats to be safe, and all they need to do is just follow the strategies that I've outlined for you guys in this video. Number 1, watch your flank. Number 2, do the V-shaped tarp. And bonus tip number 11, make sure you're sort of inching yourself forward on a higher elevation, not 2 blocks above second height, maybe 4, 5, 6 blocks above second height, and then do that V-shaped tarp if you need to. But really make sure you're inching forward and not just full speed tarping ahead, because if you speed tarp ahead, someone's going to look in the middle of your tarp and find that 150 HP metal block and shoot it out, and then your whole tarp's going to be falling down. Really make sure that if you find yourself on height in any game during FNCS, you follow these 3 tips, and I promise you your height game will be a successful win. Iamzo and Jamper actually end up getting second this game, losing to a very strong heal off player. Probably had like double med miss or something. And I really think it's really easy to play height if you know what you're doing. And I think if you follow these tips, you will know what you're doing. Thank you guys so much for watching this entire video. Hopefully some of these tips are new to you, and hopefully they will help you this FNCS, and hopefully you put up a strong performance, because anyone watching my channel should be able to put up a strong performance given the tips that they have. Thank you guys again for watching this video. Good luck in FNCS, and I will see you guys in the next video.